The restaurant floor gleamed under golden chandeliers. Power dined here. Reputation reigned. But tonight, no one was watching the food. All eyes turned to a little girl, 8, maybe 9, pushed in on a wheelchair, wearing delicate ballet slippers, untouched and forgotten. She watched the tables, yearning for movement she couldn't take alone. And in the corner, a black waiter named Marcus paused mid-step, tray in hand, his gaze fixed on her. Something tugged inside him as he met her eyes. Her hand rose, not for food, not for help, but to dance. Marcus froze, his breath catching, and then he nodded. He set down the tray, knelt by her chair, reached out his hand. The room held its collective breath. And in that instant, the gentle chaos of blades cutting meat, pitchers pouring, hushed conversations, all of it vanished. What happened next silenced an entire room. It ruptured the confidence of a billionaire mother seated just steps away, and it triggered a chain of events reaching far beyond that one night. Before we dive in, drop a comment and let us know where you're watching from. We'd love to hear from you. If you enjoy emotional stories like this, be sure to like the video, subscribe, turn on the notification bell, and share it with someone who'd love it too. I ain't never been one to stand out. Most of my life I blended into the corners, served the wine, cleared the plates, and made sure the powerful never had to see me. That's the thing about places like the one I worked in. Fancy spots where the lights hang from the ceiling like gold-dipped chandeliers and people talk more with their wallets than their mouths. You learn quick that your job ain't to exist, it's to serve, and stay invisible. But that night I stepped outside the role I was given. Not because I wanted attention, not because I was trying to make a statement, but because I saw something in that little girl's eyes that I ain't seen in a long, long time. Hope. Not the kind that comes from doctors or therapy or money, but the kind that lives in your spirit even when your body can't catch up. I didn't know who her mama was at the time. Didn't care. All I saw was a child reaching, not for sympathy, not for help, but for joy. Something as simple and sacred as a dance. And in that moment I knew. I had to say yes. I had to be what this world too often fails to be. Human. But then the room shifted. You ever feel the air change? Like, real heavy. All those eyes on me, like I'd broken some unspoken law. Her mother stood up so fast her chair screeched across the floor. She looked at me like I'd just touched something forbidden. And maybe in her world I had. But I swear to you, I wasn't trying to hurt nobody. I was just trying to give that little girl 5 seconds of something real. After that, things moved fast. Too fast. I was pulled aside. My name was shouted. The manager's voice turned sharp, then quieter, because they never want the guest to hear when they're cutting you loose. I was told to leave through the back like trash. No time to explain. No chance to speak. I walked home that night with my shoes soaked in slush and my heart about 3 inches from breaking. But what I didn't know, what I couldn't have known, was that someone had recorded the whole thing. And by morning the video had spread like fire. Suddenly everybody had something to say. Some called it beautiful, others called it inappropriate. The internet, the news, the comment sections, they all lit up with opinions. People arguing over my name, my skin, my intentions. Some folks praised me like a hero. Others said I was just looking for attention. But none of them asked me how it felt. None of them knew the weight of saying yes in a room built to silence you. And the girl's mother? She disappeared for a while. I thought maybe I'd never hear from her again. But then she showed up, quiet and alone, days later. No cameras, no bodyguards, just her. Eyes heavy, shoulders tight. What changed her? What did she see in that moment that broke her clean in two? And more than that, why did I walk away when the world finally seemed to be listening? You see, kindness, it ain't always safe. Sometimes it costs you more than cruelty ever could. And the truth about what happened next? It's not the kind of thing you can wrap up with a headline. It's messy. It's real. And it changed more than just one life. It changed mine. And if you're willing to hear it all, The silence, the shame, the second chances. Then I'll tell you everything. I ain't always been a waiter. Before the silvers, before the polished shoes and white napkins folded like origami swans, I used to teach dance. Not in some fancy uptown studio with mirrors on the walls and French words I couldn't pronounce. Nah. I taught in the back of a community center in the Bronx. We ain't have much. Some cracked floors and old boombox that only played when you smacked the side. But them kids, they showed up every day like they were training for Broadway. Some came in with stories you couldn't write in books. Some couldn't walk. Some couldn't speak. But when the music hit, something lit up inside them. I lived for that. One of the girls, wheelchair-bound since she was 4, taught me something I never forgot. She couldn't dance with her feet, so she danced with her arms, her eyes, her laughter. The grace in her movement wasn't in her legs, it was in her spirit. And when the funding dried up and the center shut down, I folded up my dreams and got a job at the Silvers. You do what you gotta do, right? Now the Silvers, that place was different. White tablecloths, quiet as a museum. Wealth walked around in suits. I kept my head down, smiled when it was safe, tapped my foot behind the kitchen doors when Miles Davis came through the speakers. That was my only rebellion, my rhythm. Then one evening she walked in. Little girl, bright eyes, tiny frame, hair tied with a pink ribbon, pushed in by her mother like a prop. I recognized that wheelchair, those braces on her legs, the way her head turned just a little too quick when music started. I knew that look, that craving. Her name, I'd later learn, was Sloane. Her mama, Margaret Wilder, was the kind of woman you read about in Forbes. Built an empire out of concrete and charm, widowed, sharp-edged, wore grief like a badge but didn't let it show. She moved like every room belonged to her. Sloane didn't say much, just watched. She'd lock eyes with people, then look away quick, like she wasn't sure if she was allowed to be seen. And for a while I did what I was supposed to. Served the wine, cleared the crumbs, didn't speak unless spoken to. But I couldn't ignore how she watched me. Every time I moved through that dining room, her eyes followed, especially when music played low through the speakers. I tapped my foot one night, just a little, not on purpose. It was habit. She saw it and smiled. That smile, it wasn't loud, it wasn't big, but it held something I hadn't seen in years. That quiet joy, that recognition. Like she knew I still had that rhythm tucked somewhere inside. Then came her birthday. They'd booked a private corner table, just the two of them. No balloons, no cake, just a cold plate of food and a silence so thick you could cut it with a butter knife. Sloane wore a dress with tiny sparkles on the sleeves. Her shoes matched. And I'll never forget this. She had on ballet slippers, brand new, never used. As I approached with their drinks, music started to play overhead. Soft jazz, familiar. I tapped my fingers against the tray. Habit again. She noticed. And for a moment, just a flicker of one, she lifted her hand. Just a few inches. But it said everything. I saw myself in her. And I saw that girl from the Bronx, spinning joy out of nothing. I saw all the things this world says disabled children can't do. All the things they strip from them before they even try. That's when I knew. I knew I couldn't stay invisible that night. I knew that sometimes the kindest thing you can do for somebody is to just let them try. And that decision? It would cost me everything. But it would give her something no one else ever did. A moment of movement, of choice, of freedom. And I'd do it again, even knowing what came after. The night it happened, I wasn't trying to be seen. I was just doing my job, quiet, steady, invisible. That's how I survived in places like the Silvers. But when I came to her table with the dessert tray, I saw her again. Sloane, sitting in that chair like she was born into stillness, but I could see it in her eyes. She wasn't made for it. Music started playing. Soft jazz, the kind that don't demand attention but sneaks into your chest. She tapped her fingers to it, Just barely. Her mama was on a call. Didn't even notice. But I did. She looked up at me and raised her hand. Man, I froze. My heart said yes before my head could catch up. I set the tray down slow, knelt beside her, and offered my hand back. She stood. Just barely. One step, then another. Her braces held firm, but her smile, it moved something in me. Then, silence. The manager shouted. Her mama turned furious, snatched her back like I'd done something wrong. Cameras clicked. A guest had caught it all. Hours later, I was fired. By morning, the video was viral, and just like that, everything changed. The morning after it happened, I woke up to my phone buzzing like it had a heartbeat of its own. I didn't check it right away. I already knew something was wrong. You can feel it in your chest before the world confirms it. When I finally looked, there were messages from people I hadn't heard from in years. Missed calls, screenshots, news clips. I scrolled, slow at first, then faster, trying to catch up to something that had already gotten way ahead of me. Waiter fired after letting disabled girl dance. Mom outraged. That headline was everywhere, spinning out across feeds, reposted with captions like "He crossed a line" or "This is what love looks like." I didn't feel like a hero. I didn't feel like a villain either. I just felt exposed. Some folks were calling me brave. Others said I disrespected her family, made a scene for attention. They didn't know me. They didn't know her. And the mother? Margaret? She didn't say much at first. But when she did, her words cut sharp. Said she was just protecting her daughter. That I acted recklessly. That Sloane's condition requires caution. But none of them asked what Sloane wanted. I wasn't at the Silvers anymore. I'd been fired by sundown that same night. Quiet. No paperwork. Just a whispered apology from the assistant manager like that could undo the damage. I packed my apron and left out the back. Same way I came in. I thought maybe that would be the end of it. A moment. A memory. Something folks would move past by the weekend. But a journalist, someone from one of them smaller outlets, reached out. Said they found something in my past. Something that didn't match the version people were painting online. They found my old dance classes. The ones I used to run out the back of the rec center in the Bronx. They found videos of me waltzing with kids who couldn't walk, choreographing pieces with teens in wheelchairs celebrating movement however it showed up. And then the tide shifted. People started sharing that. Parents who remembered those classes posted about how I made their children feel seen, respected, capable. Folks I hadn't seen in 10 years were writing paragraphs about me like they'd been waiting for a reason to speak up. I ain't never cried from joy and shame at the same time before that. But while the internet argued over who I was, Sloane went quiet. That part cut deeper than all the noise combined. I heard, through someone who worked at the restaurant still, that she stopped eating, wouldn't talk, barely moved. Her mama had to take her out of school for a few days, said she kept asking the same thing every morning. Where's the dancing man? That was the part none of them news stations covered. They showed the footage. They debated my intentions. But they didn't show the little girl sitting alone at her window waiting for a joy the world told her she couldn't have. They didn't hear the silence in that house, the kind that don't come from absence, but from hurt. I didn't try to reach out. I wanted to. Lord knows I did. But I was afraid. Not of her. Never of her. I was afraid of making it worse. Afraid that my presence might remind her of the moment her mother tried to erase. I didn't have answers. I didn't know what to do. So I stayed still and prayed somebody, somewhere, would remind her that her dance mattered, that it happened, and it meant something. To her, to me, to everyone who forgot what it feels like to take one step, even when the world says you shouldn't. I didn't know what changed her. For a long time, I thought I'd never know. I figured Margaret Wilder would bury that night under money and silence, the same way people with power often do when something don't fit their story. But sometimes, even the strongest armor cracks in the quiet. I was told she watched that video again. Not at a press conference, not with her lawyers, alone, in her corner office long after the building was empty, when the only thing left was truth and time. And this time, she didn't watch me. She watched Sloane, frame by frame. That moment when her daughter stood on those trembling legs, hand in mine, that half step forward, that smile, pure joy, no fear, no pain, no permission, just freedom. And I don't know what happened in Margaret's chest at that moment, but something opened. Maybe it was a memory. Maybe it was her remembering her own childhood, the dance lessons she never got to take, the way her own mother used to look at her like softness was weakness, how ambition was the only thing their family was allowed to feel proud of. Or maybe, just maybe, she realized she'd spent years protecting her daughter from the very thing that could heal her. I found out weeks later that she hired someone to find me, not to press charges, not to make an example out of me, but to see me. She found me in Harlem, where I belonged, at a dusty old community center with too much echo and not enough heat, teaching kids again, moving with whoever showed up. Young, old, in wheelchairs, on walkers, some with limbs that didn't move right, but hearts that beat with rhythm. That day, I was showing this boy how to move his arms like waves, just the arms. That's all he could use. But Lord, he made the air dance with him. I didn't see them at first. Margaret stood in the doorway, not in heels, not in her usual shield of control. Just a woman, plain, still, watching. And beside her, Sloane. She wasn't in that chair. She had her braces on, but she was standing gripping a walker tight, breath heavy like she'd fought to get there. Her eyes, they found me, locked in, same as before. I ain't ashamed to say it. I froze. Didn't know if I was dreaming or being tested. But then, she let go of that walker, and before I could move, she was in my arms. Tears, shaking. That small body pressed into mine like it had been carrying silence for too long. I held her, didn't speak, didn't need to. Margaret walked in after her. No guards, no reporters, just her. She looked around, at the chipped paint, the dusty windows, the kids spinning in socks on the cold floor. Then she looked at me, and she didn't apologize. She just said the one thing I never expected. Will you teach her to dance again? And that moment, that exact breath in time, it didn't feel like forgiveness. It felt like truth. It felt like the first honest thing either of us had said in a long time. And it was enough, because I wasn't looking to be right. I was just hoping someone, anyone, would finally let that little girl live. And on that day, in that beat-up room with joy echoing off the walls, she did. 6 months later, I found myself standing behind the curtain of a small stage at Sloane's school auditorium. I wasn't there to serve food. I wasn't hidden in the shadows or waiting to be called on. I was beside her, like I'd always been meant to be. The lights were low. Parents filled the rows, the kind of quiet you only get before something sacred begins. And then I saw her, standing tall in the wings with those braces still wrapped around her legs like armor, but her chin held high like a dancer. She wasn't hiding no more. Not behind silence, not behind fear. She walked onto that stage slow, steady, not perfect, not polished, but full of something this world can't teach. Courage. And I walked beside her, not as a teacher, just as a witness. The music started, soft, warm, like breath on a winter window. She raised her arms the way I taught her. Her balance shifted. One foot moved forward, then the other. The crowd didn't breathe. And in the second row, I saw her mother, Margaret, tears streaming, hands clapping. But not for performance, for progress, for love she finally understood, for a daughter she finally saw. And I just stood there, still, quiet, Like that moment was bigger than anything I'd ever been part of. Because sometimes life don't change in grand speeches or hospital miracles. Sometimes it shifts in the smallest yes. In a dance step nobody thought would happen. In a child's smile when she finally feels free. And in the heart of a woman who learned too late. That control ain't the same as care. This wasn't about race, or class, or even disability. It was about being seen. About how a single choice, to kneel, to reach out, to trust a moment, can echo louder than 1,000 headlines. So if you're still here, I just want to ask you something. What would you have done if you were in my shoes that night? Would you have said yes when the world expected you to look away? Was her mother wrong for being afraid? Or did fear blind her to the one thing her daughter needed most? Drop a comment. Share your truth. And if this story touched something in you, subscribe. Because the next one we tell might just change your life too.